welcome everybody. I see that a large number of people have joined us today. We're obviously hoping that everything works very well today. There may be occasions, I think we've just had a little bit of it with you, Henry, where sometimes the audio goes in and out a bit. But please do use chat function or raise your hand if there are any technical issues. We do have our AV team trying to keep everything running as well as possible. Obviously, sometimes the problems are at the other end of the connection, and we can't do much about it. But let me just welcome everybody once again. I wanted to take a few minutes just to give a little bit of background to building the smarter state. This is actually the sixth of these events that we've run over the last 6 years. And the idea behind this is to bring together digital leaders from across the public and private sector and to showcase how technology is shaping today's and tomorrow's public services. This is the first of ours that we've actually run virtually. Normally, we obviously host you at a venue in London. But one of the things that really has been shown very much during the pandemic is the pressure on our state and the delivery of public services, but also how digital technology has made that such a difference to that, made it possible for organizations to keep doing that. The impact that the COVID emergency has had on frontline services is obviously immediately obvious in many places, but it's also brought change in thinking and change to how Whitehall and local organizations function and how we engage with the public services, how partners help the public services to deliver. And against this backdrop, we have certainly seen tremendous effort from public sector colleagues, but also from industry partners, especially we believe from our members in responding to the crisis, and we hope mitigating the impact to communities. And you're going to hear a lot of stories, I think, over the next day and a half about the kind of things that have been done and the way they've been done. And I think I would like to highlight the fact that we've actually really done a lot at speed between us. And many times that has been one of the challenges when trying to deliver new services to the public sector, is the amount of time that things take. And I think we've shown that we can do things at speed and at scale using digital technology if we work in partnership. So this year's conference is going to focus on the role digital plays in driving change across government and public services. Speakers will reflect on the future of transformation and the legacy that I've just been talking about in terms of procurement, innovation, and the enabling role of tech in informing what the smarter state will look like. I'd like to conclude by thanking all the speakers joining us today and tomorrow, particularly obviously our keynote speakers, Julia Lopez, MP, Parliamentary Secretary to the Cabinet, Paul Maltby, Chief Digital Officer, Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government. And clearly I would like to thank our headline sponsor, Amazon Web Services, who you'll hear from shortly, but also other sponsors sponsoring our breakout sessions. That's Advanced, Leidos, OpenText, and Wipro. Obviously, we can't deliver events like this without the support of our sponsors. We also can't deliver events like this without the attendance and the engagement of our delegates and people sharing the event. So we'd like you to follow the debate on Twitter. We'd like you to share your thoughts throughout the day using hashtag #TechUKSmarterState. We've got a fantastic agenda today and tomorrow, so please do engage and enjoy the conference. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Chris Hayman. I'm delighted to welcome Chris, who we've worked with for a long time now. Chris Hayman is the Director of UK Public Sector from Amazon Web Services, and he's going to kick things off today. So let me hand over to Chris now. Chris.
Thank you, Julian. Well, hopefully everyone can hear me all right and my video is not glitching or you can see too much of my kitchen in the background. But delighted to be here and thank you for inviting us. It looks like a fantastic agenda. So I just literally wanted to spend like 5-10 minutes talking about some positive observations that I've seen in the way in which public sector organisations have evolved during this pandemic. You know, certainly when we look at the media, it can come across as quite a gloomy narrative, but I think actually the real story is much more positive one. And I think that what we have seen is that public sector organisations have really adapted, but not only adapted, they've improved the way in which they're engaging with citizens. And I think there's a number of reasons behind this that I'm going to come on to. But I wanted to talk about a few examples that we've certainly seen in the public sector, and then come on to some of those sort of mechanisms before I hand over to the Minister a bit later on. So I'm going to get straight into it. I think the first thing that we've seen is, I'm going to touch on a few areas of public sector, but just taking local authorities, I've been really impressed with the way local authorities have adapted the way in which they're serving citizens. I think there's a couple of examples I wanted to highlight. The first is London Borough of Waltham Forest. Second one is Hounslow. And both of these organisations have deployed cloud contact centres. And this has enabled them to scale up their capacity for call centres to handle, what is like 3,000 requests a day now from citizens, but also on 7 days a week, which hasn't been possible before. So I think, clearly when we think about contact centres in government and, thousands of agents in a single room, that's just not going to be the model moving forward. And I think some of the things that local authorities are doing in this space, where they're looking at remote agents, but also chatbots dealing with some of the perhaps more mundane or kind of easy to handle requests, I think is going to be an important move for organisations moving forward. We've also seen this in the charity space as well. So the Silver Line is a good example of a charity. It's a contact centre for the elderly, and I think we're all acutely aware of how often elderly people can feel alone even before the pandemic, and this has become even more apparent during COVID. So that ability to enable the Silver Line to increase their call volumes by 30% is an important one. Education as well, clearly we've seen a massive shift in the way learners are receiving their education. We're working with organisations like Firefly Learning. So this is small ed tech, it's a small British business that is now seeing 10x increase in the way that people are receiving remote learning. And I think we'll see that continue moving forward. And there's also a lot happening in the education research space, clearly. I think the final set of examples, I can't not mention healthcare. I think there's a couple of things here that I would call out. Firstly, I think some healthcare providers have had a bit of a head start here. So if we look at some of the telehealth, telemedicine organisations, Babylon Health is a good example. Clearly, they've had a massive influx of remote diagnostics and so on. They're using artificial intelligence, AI on AWS tools to understand and provide kind of intelligent chatbot capability for patients, almost like a doctor's brain almost, in order to see whether they need kind of further intervention or support by general practitioners. There's a huge amount going on in the diagnostic space. I can't cover all of it. I'm sure a lot of Tech UK members, not only just AWS, but all of Tech UK members are really leaning into the space. We've set aside $20 million as part of diagnostics research into the disease. But I think the example that really struck me was one where we're working with Imperial College, and there's not a lot of work that's been done on how we treat patients with COVID-19. There's no prior art in this sort of thing. And in fact, there's hundreds of thousands of articles on how we should be thinking about treating patients with COVID-19, but no real sense of how we should do that at scale. And so Imperial College have spun up a global knowledge platform in this, and using natural language processing and deep AI techniques on AWS to really sort of sift through this. They're calling it an infodemic. It's just an overwhelming number of articles, but no real sense of how we should collate this information and move forward. So I thought that was a really interesting example of how healthcare organisations are moving forward. So what are organisations doing that is different as part of this pandemic that perhaps hasn't been done before? And I guess more importantly, how can we use some of these lessons as part of our business as usual? And I think there's a few things here. I think the first one is the importance of government collaboration. There's been examples, way back in the day, we worked with TfL around APIs. They've outsourced the development of apps and so on with TfL. And a great example of that is they've got a cyclist injury and fatality API. Safety is their number one objective. And now we can get people, developers, crowdsourcing on that API to understand, what are the injuries on the Marylebone Road? How do we stop trucks turning left on cyclists and so on? And so the use of APIs is critical. DVLA have taken up the mantle in this. And of course, the NHS has as well, using Notify, using their text message service around COVID-19. So I think collaboration is a key one. I think the next one is having small, empowered, but autonomous teams. In Amazon, we have this notion of a 2-pizza team. So no more people than can be fed by 2 pizzas. It's a bit of an Americanism, I get it. But the point is that they're highly autonomous and they're empowered to make the right decisions, and they can cut down on some of the bureaucracy required for decision making. So if there's a problem in the middle of the night, they're the people that get paged. They have complete ownership over the problem space. And we have seen this in government. We've seen it where, albeit with the right guardrails, technologists are empowered to make production code changes without having to go through perhaps the same bureaucracy they've had to before. And this is because they've had top-down strategic leadership and they've been empowered to make those decisions. And of course, they have to have the right guardrails in place. There's a mental model that we use in Amazon, and it's one of, is this a one-way door or a two-way door? So certainly everyone within my team can make two-way door decisions, whether you're a junior member of staff or a more senior member of staff. And the idea being is that if it's not the right path, it's a decision where you can back out of it pretty quickly. And those sort of decisions, we want to make at pace. We want to be able to do that quickly. A one-way door decision is where you have to make a much more deliberate and analytical decision. And this is where we involve more senior stakeholders before we make that decision, because it could be a decision that could erode customer trust. And again, I think we've seen inklings of this within government where they've been more empowered to make those sort of decisions. Finally, another thing that we think about is how do we build capability? A lot of organizations will sort of start coding away, and then they'll throw it over the marketing wall and they'll have to figure out how to pitch this. For us, we have a working backwards process. So it's very much about understanding what is the customer problem, whether it be around disease diagnosis, or around delivering an EdTech capability. Before we write any code, we write a press release. So we have this working backwards process. We write a press release as if this product or feature was going to be launched. And that gets out some of the, the narrative that we want to deliver. And then we write the frequently asked questions. So what are the really hard things, what customers ask us about this product or feature request? And it's only after then that we've gone through all that we start whiteboarding ideas and we start delivering code. The fundamental premise is that over 90% of what we deliver has a customer request at the heart of it. And I think this, again, is an interesting mental model that we think government could benefit from moving forward. So, that's about it for me. I just wanted to highlight a few examples of where we've seen some real positive change within government, and perhaps some of the mechanisms that government can use moving forward for delivering pace of capability with the appropriate guardrails as part of their business as usual. There's days of content on this, I won't bore you with that. But with that, I'm delighted to hand over to the Minister responsible for GDS and the government's DDAT service, Julia Lopez. Thank you.